She literally had to crawl past her husband, then her mother-in-law, to be able to lie down and facing the wall. Now everyone, today I'm going to bring you a really shameless case. The victim was a wife, but her husband wasn't her murderer though. It's her mother-in-law. I'll go through the whole story, then provide you with some speculations and discussions in the end. The victim, she easily met her husband in the start of the millennium. During that time, she was graduated with PhD and just joined the university as a lecturer, where it's only about 1.5 hour drive away from her hometown, Changzhou City. And this guy, her future husband, also worked in the same university as she was. That's how they met, I bet. She was raised and lived in an iron tower up until she met him, as both of her parents were professors and worked in the universities as well. And she herself spent her entire life within a relatively simple academic environment. She didn't work nor got any contact to the outside world, other than the academics. So she fell in love with this guy who was brought up very, very differently than her. He came from a poor background but worked so hard to be able to also work in the same university as she was. Basically, she easily got by birth with what he had to devote all his efforts and struggles to obtain. Therefore, it's understandably that she was attracted to this special someone who was somewhat different than her surroundings. And she, of course, received oppositions from her parents and families when she was with this guy. While they could say it's discrimination from the wealthier class, but knowing what had happened later, I don't think that's the case. Anyway, no indulgent parent in the world can outsmart their own child. She easily married to her colleague Dong Gangbiao. At first, this newly married couple were living in the school dormitory, where was a one-bedroom suite. Everything was kinda okay though, until Dong Gangbiao's mother wanted to live with them. He was raised in a single-parent family. Reluctant though, she chose to respect her husband's mother and allow her mother-in-law to move in with them. But that was prelude to all the tragedies. I guess in her mind, it's just a way to compensate his mother. It's not easy for a single mom to bring up a kid during all those years before Dong Gangbiao could have given back to his original family. As simple as Xu Yili was, she must think she ought to take care of his original families as well, even for a little bit, like taking her mother in to live with them. Complicated Oriental Asian families issues. Her mother-in-law married 3 times, and Dong Gangbiao was the child she had with her second husband. And she was proud of him, obviously. Being a lecturer in university was a respectable career in her mind. So she acted arrogantly to everyone, including her daughter-in-law and the latter's families and relatives. Although her son was just a school magazine editor at the time. On the other hand, her daughter-in-law was the respectable lecturer. As a hostess to the family, she really set up a Murphy bed for her mother-in-law in the living room. At first, Liu Xiuying, her mother-in-law, was okay with the Murphy bed, but in a couple of days, she started to get cranky and refused to sleep in the living room anymore. So how could this mother-in-law to treat herself if she wasn't going to sleep in the living room? Neither me nor Xu Li could think of a better solution to this situation. But genius Liu Xiuying came up with an idea that persuaded Dong Gangbiao. Liu Xiuying wanted to sleep on the very bed where Xu Yili and Dong Gangbiao rested on. I mean, No normal person would allow this happen, right? Xu Yili expected her husband to decline this absurd request. Out of everyone's mind, he didn't turn it down. He allowed his mother to sleep between he and his wife. So in the first few nights, Xu Yili literally had to crawl past her husband, then her mother-in-law, to be able to lie down and facing the wall. Slept in between the wall and her mother-in-law. Well, she got no touch to her husband. I don't even know how she could sleep in that. And she was pregnant when this, whole sleeping thing happened. She had to face to the wall while she's pregnant. Finally, Xu Yili raised objections to this unreasonable arrangement with her husband. I bet she was expecting that her husband would stand by her side and persuaded his mother either to move out to the living room or just move out from their home sweat. Beyond her expectation, but I guessed it, her husband did against her will again. Xu Yili, the hostess of the family, was removed from the bedroom, and she had to sleep in the living room herself alone when her husband was sleeping with his mother in the bedroom, like on the same bed. And that's emphasized again, she was pregnant when this whole thing happened. That's bearable for her though. I guess that's because she was pregnant and she didn't feel good to sleep with anyone anyway. But what she couldn't tolerate was the continuing water drop sounds, throughout days and nights. Her mother-in-law was an extremely thrifty person. Back then the water meter wasn't accurate, so a teeny tiny flow of water drops wouldn't trigger the water meter. Liu Xiuying would prepare these different sizes of plastic wash basins and put them underneath all those water taps in the flat. Let the water drops flow and fill all those wash basins, dropped so they could use the water without paying the bills. Xu Yili, she couldn't sleep at night with the sound of those dripping water. From what we have talked before, we learned already Xu Yili had zero authority to this family of hers. Every need she had would be ignored by the other two living under the same roof. But lucky her parents loved her deeply. One day she couldn't suppress her aggravation any longer and overturned all those wash basins and left to her own parents' place. She finally cried and told her parents about what had happened to her. Her parents were heartbroken seeing the apple of their eyes was treated so badly by her husband and his family. But they still, at this point, wanted her to fix her relationship with them since she was pregnant. Her parents must think it'd be difficult for a divorced woman with a kid. Therefore, Xu Yili's parents brought up that they could buy a flat for the newly married couple and signed the property under her husband's name. Her parents were trying to please her husband just so he and his mother would treat their daughter better. Naive as their daughter in a way. You can't change a toxic person. The only solution is just to leave and stay away from those toxic people. In addition to that flat, Xu Yili's parents even brought her mother-in-law to Changzhou, the capital city of their province,
for tourism.
And when they heard that this mother-in-law had some eye problems, they even paid for all the medical costs she needed to get her eyes cured. Xu Yili and her parents were too nice to Liu Xiuying, right? Remember that Xu Yili and her husband lived in a new flat her parents bought for them. Her mother-in-law also moved in not long after, but now they got spared rooms for her mother-in-law to stay. Things wouldn't be as awkward as it was, right? Liu Xiuying, her mother-in-law, insisted that she wanted to sleep with the couple, or precisely with her son. Xu Yili at this point was about to give birth, so she took it all. She stopped challenging her mother-in-law and let her be whatever she wanted. She just hoped that things would be better when she had the child with her husband. In 2008, Xu Yili gave birth to a son, and the tension between she and her mother-in-law wasn't easing off. It got even worse. Liu Xiuying often despised Xu Yili, saying something like, quote unquote, I got up and walked around right after giving birth to your husband, but look at you, being lazy and staying in bed all day round. Liu Xiuying claimed that she wasn't healthy enough to take care of this newborn. Xu Yili's parents were happy, though, to take care of their daughter and the grandson. But Xu Yili's maternal leave ended too quickly. She and her son had to move back with her husband and mother-in-law again. Well, Xu Yili and her parents worked in different universities and lived in different cities. She couldn't stay with her parents for good unless she got divorced. Let's talk back to the mother-in-law. This flat her parents bought for Xu Yili came with a really large and ground floor grocery room. So without her consent, Liu Xiuying told her oldest son and his family to move in that grocery room and make it a home. During that time, Xu Yili's husband was preparing for his PhD application, so he could stay absent from the story here. And Xu Yili was locked out of her flat many times while her husband wasn't around, by her mother-in-law. But why? I don't know why. The information I read online didn't include the reason why this mother-in-law could be so boldly and confidently locking the lady of the family outside. Xu Yili, when she was locked out, had to either leave in her car or crashed at her friend's place. And as a lecturer, she needed to write many academic papers. Her evil mother-in-law would bin her papers while she wasn't home. She didn't want to worry her parents, I bet, when she was treated unfairly like that. And from some documents I read, her husband started to beat her as well during the time being. He took the excuse as she initiated troubles with his mother. Therefore, she was deserved to be beaten. Basically, her husband, along with his family, were a piece of shit. Finally, when it reached to 2010, Xu Yili mustered the courage to file for divorce from her abusive husband. But before this whole divorce thing took place, Xu Yili already moved out and no longer lived with her mother-in-law and her husband. That day, on the 26th of November 2010, Xu Yili was back to that flat prepared for an exam the next day. Convenient as it is, Dong Gangbiao, her husband, was away on a business trip that day. I bet the examination center was close to that very flat, otherwise she wouldn't crash at it, since she was going to divorce her husband, and she didn't like her mother-in-law. Although she was initiated the divorce process, it wasn't done properly yet, and her husband wasn't around. Why not stay in that flat her parents bought for her just for one night? But her mother-in-law wouldn't make it easy for her. Lily was annoyed by the noisy television played by her mother-in-law in the living room while she was studying in her room. She couldn't stay focused when the television was playing stupidly loud. Imaginably, she left her room and asked her mother-in-law to lower that volume a bit so she could continue her study. Liu Xiuying with a sneer. She instead turned the volume up as loud as it could go. She really got angry. She unplugged that TV. And finally, the room was quieted down. But the silence was broken quickly by Liu Xiuying's ranting and raving. Not long after the quarrel, Liu Xiuying threw a bottle of petrol to Shi Li's face. Shi Li was wearing contact lenses, so she lost vision right away and slept over. Vicious as Liu Xiuying, she took out a kitchen knife and stabbed multiple times at her neck. The forensics later concluded that the cause of death was stabbed and cut with a sharp instrument. Shi Li's mother-in-law and her killer, murderer, changed her tainted clothes, hopped on her e-bike, had a meal like it's just one of the normal days after committing that crime. Liu Xiuying even took a walk after the meal before going to the police and turned herself in. While facing a camera when Liu Xiuying described what she had done, she said she was full of guilt and it was a killing passion rather than a murder. Until her lies were caught. She bought the patch a few days prior than the crime. It's never just out of passion. Remember we have just said she really wasn't living with her mother-in-law and her husband anymore. She was happened to lived in that very flat her mother-in-law also lived in by accident. Not accident, because she had this exam, otherwise she wouldn't even show up there. But her mother-in-law, Liu Xiuying, actually bought these patches a few days prior, which means she planned to kill her. It's just that she didn't find the chance until Shi Li ran right into her trap to stay in that flat. On the morning of the 2nd of December 2011, Suzhou Intermediate People's Court handed down this first instance judgment on the case. Considering that the case was triggered by domestic conflicts and the defendant, who was 66 years old, was of advanced age, Liu Xiuying was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve, but she was released from prison on a medical parole for cancer after serving only 2 years in prison. She was awarded death penalty successfully though. Fingers crossed she didn't survive the cancer. It's evil for me to wish somebody ill, but I'm not feeling guilty in this case. Dong Gangbiao, not long after his wife was murdered, began to ask for romantic matchups, and he got married again in 2016. When the time passed by, his life got even better as he became a real lecturer and professor of Marx and philosophy in the university. Remember, he was just a school magazine editor when he just met his late wife, Shi Li. And to the flat they were living in, the one that bought by Shi Li's parents. Under Chinese law, her parents actually had the right to take it back because it was bought by them fully. But rumors online saying that in order to stop Shi Li's parents from getting Shi Li's heritage and that flat, Dong Gangbiao would abuse his own child, the grandson of Shi Li's parents. Therefore, Dong Gangbiao got to continue living in that flat and sat with all Shi Li's heritage. Well, they didn't actually divorce when she passed away. They were still legally married. It's all hearsays and speculations from the internet, what I'm about to say next. This case, Shi Li couldn't bear any longer right. She wanted to get divorced, but the flat vehicles they drove were all provided by Dong Gangbiao's parents-in-law. They had all the rights to take everything back after they got divorced under Chinese law, and that above information was acknowledged well by Dong Gangbiao because he was a law graduate. Liu Xiuying threw petrol on her daughter-in-law before stabbing her, right? But how would she know that petrol on contact lenses could cause instant loss of vision. Liu Xiuying didn't have any related academic background, but she somehow just acquired this particular knowledge about how to use the petrol. Otherwise, a 60-plus old lady with cancer wouldn't be able to put down a young woman normally. Remember, the forensics conclusion was that all the attacks were focused on her neck. It's like she knew it's the only way to make sure Xu Li was killed and she must die for it. She was kind of weak. If she stabbed her on the body, Xu Li would have chance to survive. And lastly, she did it when her son had a perfect alibi. It's like everything was planned well. Liu Xiuying knew from the beginning that she wouldn't stay in the prison long. She understood well enough about the consequences she killed her daughter-in-law, so she did it without hesitation. I don't know how to assess both the case and the individuals involved in it. What do you think about this case? Tell me in the comment section below, please. And I will see you in the next case.